Chances are, if you grew up playing video games or just played them a lot in general, you thought about making your own game. However, finding a clear vision for one is hard, and without it, it's a bit difficult to stay motivated, as you don't know what you're doing. But what if that vision came to you in a dream? What if, one morning, you woke up and realized you dreamt of an ending for a game that doesn't exist, and the ending was so good, you had to make an entire game around it? Exactly that happened to Toby Fox, a music composer turned game developer. And it's not like he's bad at composing music, so he had to switch careers. I mean, the man has Pokemon on his resume, for God's sake. It really doesn't get much better than that. Mr. Fox went to game development simply because he wanted to make a game which had that ending from his dream. But immediately jumping to make your dream game is crazy. Can lead to a ton of frustrations and easily burn you out, because you're still figuring out what to do. And Mr. Fox knew that. So he made the call that it would be better to make a test game, if you will. Just to see if he could make something half decent. After all, he had some experience, since he did make a ROM hack for Earthbound in the past, so why not take a swing at game development? That test game ended up being goddamn Undertale. One of the biggest indie games, a game which will most likely go down in history books, a game which even Pope has. And it started as a test game. Alright, cool, whatever. Now Toby had a pretty clear confirmation that he can in fact make a game. With his newfound skills, experience, confidence, and a buttload of money, he was more than ready now to start working on his dream game, Deltarune. I, on the other hand, didn't do anything of value. A friend recommended me Deltarune, and since I like to talk about video games, I decided to just do that. After playing the game, I ended up with more questions than answers, so I went to only people that know everything. The YouTube essayists. That did not help in the slightest, since a lot of stuff in the story is theories and speculations, and trying to understand the mind of Toby Fox, which is something I don't even think Toby Fox himself can do. I mean, look at this thing. This is just people trying to understand what the main character is. So I'm gonna leave deciphering the deeper story part to the experts. Okay, maybe not you, but still you get the point. But I can still give a very brief rundown of the story of both chapters 1 and 2, while avoiding some pretty big spoilers, and not getting into deeper lore. I also highly encourage you to play the game yourself, but if you want to stick around, let's get into it. The purpose of chapter 1 is purely introductory, focusing on explaining the world and what the fountains are, your role in it, as well as getting to know the characters who will be your party members for the rest of the adventure. That means that stuff won't exactly get too weird. There's still your typical Toby Fox humor, which depending on the person can be a hit or miss. For me personally, it was a huge hit. However, that means that the story of chapter 1 does suffer in one aspect, and that being the villain of the story. We only hear from people about King, that's his actual name, so we don't know much about him, nor how he looks till the very end. Asgore in Undertale was similar in that regard, but King just fails to hook you in the same way. He does get more development in chapter 2, however said development can be skipped if you choose not to talk to him in chapter 2. I personally like him a lot more after talking to him in chapter 2, but it still does feel like he could have been fleshed out a bit more in chapter which he is the final boss of. It does seem, however, that all the development went to his son, as Lancer is probably my favorite character in both chapters. Lancer is a character who is just a kid trying to play the bad guy, because his father is a bad guy. But because he fails at being one, he serves as the main source of comedy in chapter 1. He quickly strikes friendship with Susie, one of the main characters, and their dynamic is just perfect. Susie is your stereotypical troublemaker, at least that's how she seems at the start. In reality, she is just a very troubled person who becomes much warmer towards her main character, Chris, later on. To be honest, I didn't like her at the start, as I dislike rude characters in general. However, her development was handled so well, so that dislike went away pretty fast. And in my opinion, she's possibly the best written character in the game. Chris, well, Rosie is a cinnamon roll, and that's pretty much it. This feminine looking goat wants everyone to get along, and is very definition of a lawfully good character. He serves as your guide, and he is the only one who seems to know what the hell is going on. Jevil is an optional boss, who used to be King's Jester, before getting locked up. That's all we know about him. He also has a banger battle music, but more about him in gameplay parts of the video. Now onto the Chapter 2. While Chapter 1 had this whole Alice in the Wonderland type aesthetic, Chapter 2's whole shtick is the internet. Enemies, the world, and pretty much everything is inspired by the internet. And while Chapter 1 was like an introduction to the world, Chapter 2 is more so focused on the characters. Noelle, who was previously a minor character, now becomes one of the main ones. And to me personally, she didn't feel that interesting. Sure, she's a sweet and timid kid who often visits her dad in the hospital. She's afraid of rats and has a mad crush on Susie. I don't dislike this character, and I can see why a lot of people adore her. So I'm not saying she's a bad character by any means. It's more due to my taste. Birdly is... In the Chapter 1, the little I talked to him, I didn't like him. In Chapter 2, I also didn't like him, for majority of the time. He does redeem himself, but at that point my likeness meter, if you will, went to just neutral 0. I do hope we get to see more of him in the future, as I believe he does have potential to be a really good character. But as things stand right now, he is in the gray zone. Now I finally get to talk about Queen. Queen is either my favorite or second favorite character in the game. She's the main antagonist and the final boss of Chapter 2, but honestly, she doesn't feel like an antagonist. And I mean that in the best way possible. Unlike King, who doesn't show up until the end, Queen shows up everywhere and absolutely steals the show. I mentioned how Chapter 1 doesn't feel too crazy and over the top. Well, it seems like Toby decided to put all of that into this one character, and I couldn't be happier. She's just this embodiment of internet humor, and since I'm terminally online, I vibe with that. Hey, right back at ya, Queen, high five. In the ending which I got, she becomes a stepmother to Lancer, and honestly I couldn't be happier with that ending. It's two of my favorite characters just vibing. There's also Rule's card. Yeah, he's pretty good whenever you get to see him. I lost to him in this ship minigame. I don't really have much to say about him, to be honest. But that's enough about story and characters. Our next discussion will be about... The gameplay is essentially everything that made Undertale good, but refined and polished. It's still your bullet hell with a heart, but this time Toby also introduced some new mechanics. And those are guard and spells in the act section. Spells can be used to either pacify or help with pacifying someone, or to hurt them even harder. There are also combo spells which consume turn of everyone that is a part of said combo. Sometimes the effectiveness of those combos depend on your skill, as you can see on the screen. This battle system is something I loved back when I played Undertale in 2016, and even more here in Deltarune, as it feels more fleshed out. How much damage you do and how much damage you take will entirely depend on your skills, and not RNG. However, if you're struggling with a boss or monsters in general, you can buy or find more defensive equipment, alongside healing items in general. Speaking of monsters, each have at least one attack pattern, however some have more than one. They can also have different compositions, changing the way you dodge and keeping the fights feeling less repetitive, despite battling the same monsters you fought on multiple occasions. Both chapters have a final boss, and while in my opinion, first one was a bit underwhelming in terms of both presentation and the battle itself, the second one couldn't have been more of a blast. Introducing a new mechanic early on, for it to pay off big time in her fight, on top of her already more than enjoyable personality, and even including a running gag in the game. There are also two optional bosses, one in each chapter, Jevil and Spamton Neo. Spamton Neo is also much better than Jevil, since he's a character which you come across before, and is overall just presented in a more interesting way and has a better payoff. And more importantly, it doesn't include the goddamn ponies. Music absolutely goes hard. I don't even think I need to mention it, since this is Toby Fox we're talking about. However, I can't say I found a track I love as much as I love Megalovania, and especially Burgentrakung, Asgore's theme. But Deltarune is still only 2 chapters in, so that can very well change. Now I think I covered everything I wanted to say, so I should just give you a... In conclusion, do I think Toby Fox managed to out-Undertale Undertale? No, but did he manage to out Deltarune Undertale? I don't know where I'm going with this. In my humble opinion, I don't think he managed to outdo his magnum opus yet. That's the key word, yet. Deltarune is absolutely an amazing game, but it is in a bit of an unfortunate spot. The game is like a younger brother to an older brother who dropped out of university because he managed to create a multi-million-dollar business instead, and to put even more salt on the wood, he works at a soup kitchen over weekends. However, it doesn't mean it's all over from the start. Deltarune has all the pieces in place. Now it just needs to be longer and keep up the quality from Chapter 2. It doesn't even need to outdo Chapter 2, but I'm sure it will. I found the game more interesting than its predecessor, and while I doubt they'll have the same cultural impact Undertale had, in terms of quality I have zero doubt in my mind it'll be a better game. The gameplay, music and art style provide an experience which you can't really find in other games, once again ignoring the brother. Toby Fox is an amazing game developer, and from what I've seen online, a pretty cool guy. So I do hope he manages to create a game with that ending that came to him in a dream all those years ago. But all of this was just my opinion. First 2 chapters of Deltarune are also free on Steam and itch.io, so I highly recommend you check out the game for yourselves if you haven't already. And if you want, feel free to express your opinion about the game in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe is always appreciated, and take care.